our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, a very good morning to you.
Yes, indeed, we are here at Westpark Cemetery where Ambassador Kumalo will be laid to rest. Earlier on at the service, many people spoke fondly about Ambassador Kumalo. I just want to touch on some of those messages, starting from those who knew him too well. You know, the relatives, the family members saying that he was a father, he was an uncle who always ensured that the family was united. The son talking fondly about the relationship with the father was committed to the struggle, even ensuring that the children are committed to the struggle. Mandla relating a story where there were protests at a university in the United States of America where he was studying, and he decided not to participate in those protests, fearing that he will be expelled from school. And when his father called him to check, he indicated to him that he must participate in those protests because South Africans must always ensure that they fight injustices wherever they are. Secondly, the former president of the Republic, President Thabo Mbeki, who knew him very well, you recall that he was an ambassador to the UN during the tenure of former President Thabo Mbeki, speaking about us not having to say much at this moment, but rather allow the international community to reflect on the life and time of Ambassador Kumalo, making an example of a condolence message that came from a Ugandan judge who wrote about Ambassador Kumalo, saying that even though as a judge in Uganda, in the East Africa region, he didn't get close to Ambassador Kumalo or have never been to the UN, but he was following Ambassador Kumalo's work at the United Nations, and he was a real ambassador for the continent, putting Africa first. Also, the former president, talking about other people who knew Ambassador Kumalo well. We saw messages from Egypt, messages from Zambia, messages from Asia, messages from North America, and many messages from the United States of America. The other important issue that the former president highlighted was that during the struggle before 1994, when those who were in struggle, particularly engaging with international community, encouraging them to support the struggle in the country, there was a time where the U.S. Congress had to take a decision whether to support the sanctions against South Africa or not to support the sanctions against South Africa. The then President of the United States of America, Ronald Reagan, at the Security Council then used his veto to decide on what needs to be done. And in that case, he was supporting the then apartheid system, saying that the sanctions are going to harm the ordinary South Africans. But because of the hard work of Ambassador Kumalo, who was there in the United States of America lobbying international community, he was able to get support from the congressmen and women who then overturned Ronald Reagan's veto. If you have to overturn a president decree or decision, you know that you are very powerful. It speaks to how committed he was. And we know very well that at the United Nations, he was respected. We saw this week messages from the United Nations, and he was very close to the former UN Secretary General, the African, who was there during his tenure. And at that time, there were lots of issues that they were dealing with. And Kofi Annan, at some point in time when he was dealing with Iraq question, Ambassador Kumalo was very consistent in line with the South African foreign policy of non-interference on other countries, but secondly, pursuing peace and security around the world. When America and the UK took a decision to invade Iraq, South Africa stood firm to say there are no weapons of mass destruction and therefore there shouldn't be any invasion on Iraq. But unfortunately, the superpowers, using their veto power, they took a decision to invade Iraq. We know by now that the former president of the United States of America, George W. Bush, has since apologized, accepting that they erred. Even Tony Blair also apologized on many decisions that they took in the Security Council, ignoring the advice of South Africa. And it is during that time when Ambassador Kumalo was a South African permanent representative in the United Nations. And also, he played a very important role in ensuring that South Africa gets its non-permanent seat in the Security Council for the first time. You can imagine here a new government with new responsibilities, but because of his experience on multilateralism, he was able to push and promote South Africa's foreign policy. Coincidentally, today, the Security Council will converge in New York at the UN headquarters, where an urgent meeting has been called after America requested an urgent meeting to discuss Venezuela. The American position is that they must endorse the opposition leader who has decided to announce himself as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. It is a coup, and it is during this time where one remembers Ambassador Kumalo, because I am sure he was going to take a firm stand that if we have a policy of non-interference and we are saying we shouldn't endorse a coup, he was going to advise perhaps Ambassador Majila that this afternoon South Africa should not support America on its quest to confirm the coup in Venezuela. We know that Britain is likely to support them, France is likely to do the same, but China and Russia, who are also members of the BRICS nations and close allies and friends of South Africa, I think they are going to take one position not to support the call by the United States of America to recognize the opposition leader who has decided to declare himself the legitimate leader of Venezuela. That is Ambassador Kumalo. Many people, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, also talking about what she learned from him as a foreign affairs minister. She had to rely on Ambassador Kumalo on many other issues. And back to you in studio, Blaine.
Sophie, thank you very much indeed for your reporting. You're coming to you live from the Westpark Cemetery there. And that's a wrap of the agenda.